What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're returning, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and notification bell too. Why not? Let's just get into it and get notified for all the uploads. Great times. All right, we're talking today about obviously Bitcoin, a little bit about Ethereum as it relates to the overall market health. We're talking a little bit about the S&P 500, just in terms of, I think it's good to just keep an eye on that as a barometer, because for whatever, we'll talk about that. And then a couple pieces about what's going on in the greater macro cycle. We're going to spend a lot of time just talking about altcoins and specifically having a plan for altcoins, for any coin, as things progress. And I want to hopefully bring up a few key concepts, key ideas that I think often get lost in the mix at moments like this. All right. So we're looking at Bitcoin. Now, this chart is obviously very basic. I was listening on the podcast. This is the same old chart we look at. You get the downward trend line. This is not log right now. And you get the long-term trend line. I'm just going to delete the RSI for now because it's really not that helpful. That's another thing. Just to FYI, when it comes to technical analysis, I find that this is the whole self-fulfilling prophecy thing. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. And while I think that there's a case to be made on both sides of that, I do think that if you're looking at the same stuff everybody else is looking at, the problem is less about being a self-fulfilling prophecy and more of the problem being it's already baked into the price. So as you learn technical analysis, I find that simpler and longer time frames is really the most effective strategy, right? If you're going to use technical analysis. And honestly, I think that some of the best technical analysis is just being able to get a sense of what's going on, as opposed to being like, oh, what's the oscillator saying? And you don't have to get into the minutia. So anyway, we're looking at this and we're scrolling in. We're on the 4 hour. Obviously, we're not really painting this with anything other than just looking at volume and looking at the candle, so to speak. And I think there's a few things to keep in mind here. The first is that the sheer amount of wicks that you see. This last week, it was just insane. What I mean by wicks, if you're looking at candles, you can see how the price kind of opens and closes. The actual body of the candle is relatively small, but there's massive amounts of wicks. That means that there's a ton of sell volume, ton of buy and sell volume, all kind of equaling at the same equilibrium. It's very volatile. This is typically true when there's a lot of margin trading happening. So I bring that up because it's easy to forget about the levels of what creates whether it be a price floor, whether it be a price reversal, or whether it be a price continuation. We don't know what it's going to be. But who are the players that are really making this area happen? So I'm going to zoom out again on Bitcoin. And we all know, or anybody who was here last year, everybody was participating in this bull run. Everybody was buying, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, whatever. Every single person who's watching this, listening to this, I would venture to guess, was either putting their own money into it or they were actively involved. Like they were paying attention to it every single day, and they were excited about it. They had strategy. Fast forward, let's call it 5 months to now, as this price is slowly starting to even out, right? The slope is starting to even out. A vast majority of people who are still here, many people have pieced out already. See ya. Are watching it, but they're not actually putting nearly as much money into the system. And I think that that's a very, very important point, because I think that allows for the story of, well, institutional money must be coming in or bigger accounts must be coming in, because the individuals, the retail investors, aren't putting as much money in. And you can go look at the site traffic stats on all the exchanges, Coinbase, Gemini, even Bitfinex, anything really. And you'll see that they have massively lower traffic. You can go look at the app download number, the app store of all these wallets and everything. It's all down, and yet the price is evening out. And so something is going on here that some people know about, either whales or the people who are really running a lot of these margin accounts, whatever it may be. But that to me is suspicious, that there's not a huge widespread feeling of, okay, this is the bottom, let's get back in, that's causing this thing to flatten. What I think is happening, in my opinion, is that there's enough people holding, which is causing the supply, the amount of available Bitcoin to actually buy and sell is decreasing, which is causing the price to flatten out. And also this is being run by a lot of people running margin accounts, potentially some people that are trying to just pump the price so they can dump their coins, stuff like that. But I'm not completely convinced that this is being driven by people like you and me. And this comes from talking to people, this comes from just observing it, and just from my own personal opinion. And what that means is that we may see a recovery, right? It's looking pretty good. I mean, especially Ethereum. Ethereum's looking really good. And we may see it come back up a bit, but we have not experienced that like total panic freak out. And I don't mean that. I don't want to see that. I mean, I do and I don't, right? Like you do because it's good for the market. You don't because it's terrifying and like everybody loses their mind. But we have not seen that. I mean, we kind of saw that back here, right? In early February when I went to 6,000. That was pretty good panic selling. But we have not seen that again. And typically you need to see that at some point to signal not only all the selling activity, but that's when you get people like you and me, where we say, hey, this price is actually low enough that I will go buy more. I'll go put more money into the system, and it gets that velocity of money back up. So short term, I think it actually looks okay, which is why I think altcoins are starting to pop here and there, which we'll talk about. But I don't know. There's something about this that just, it seems like it's being, like there's, it's just not totally exhausted itself yet. And I think that that's why many people, myself included, I'm not like, all right, let's go for it. Let's rock and roll. I'm going to start buying everything up because I'm not totally sold. Going back to yesterday's video, there's a good situation. Like, all right, well, let's just wait for this confirmation to happen. I'm willing to give up a little bit of the upside so that the floor doesn't fall out from underneath me. Now, this brings up an interesting point. People that have been asking me, hey, do you still dollar cost average? What's the deal with that? Is that still an effective strategy? And the answer is I stopped dollar cost averaging right around, I don't know, February-ish, mostly because my overall picture of the market changed. And I was also just like, I think that there's, I don't know, I've never experienced this in this sense. I don't know what the downside looks like. I don't know how to time this nearly as well. Last year it was easy to dollar cost average because things were screaming up and the slope was increasing. And when that's happening, you're basically just like giving yourself a rationality to dump money into it. But in February, I looked at this and I was like, is this recovery still in the parabolic channel? Meaning, do I know this is going to go up in the short term, or are we going to go through a long drawdown before it happens? And if that's the case, maybe I should be trading more than I should be dollar cost averaging. So that's just my personal opinion on this. For many of you, if you are doing dollar cost averaging or continuing to do it, I still think it's a viable strategy, but you got to firmly believe in the future of, let's call it Bitcoin. And you got to be willing to go, what's going on here? You got to be willing to go pretty long term on your moves, because at this point there's just so many unknowns. Dollar cost averaging into something which is very unknown is always a little different, right? And that's different than something like the S&P 500, right? A lot of people read like The Intelligent Investor or Random Walk Down Wall Street, and they're like, well, index funds for stocks work, and this is the strategy that works in the stock market. Like my friends in 2008, they tried to time it and they got wrecked. And, if they hadn't, they'd make all this money. The difference is that the stock market has 100 years of history. Like, we know it's coming back. You can believe the crypto's coming back. That's different. We've talked about this. So anyway, this, I think we may see some bullish activity in the short term, which I think may cascade into altcoins, but it may be like a mega bear trap, bull trap, whichever one, it jumps up. Everybody gets really excited, starts to buy in, boom, done. So I guess that is a bull trap. So be cautious. The best way to defend yourself against situations like this is to scale in. I had a call with someone the other day who was going through kind of the same stuff that everyone goes through. They're like, man, what do I do? What's the exact move that I should be doing right now? And what I think the best defense on that, or the best plan, is always, well, what's the first 5% move I can make today? Right? You don't have to make your full, it doesn't have to be binary. It's not like either I'm going all in or I'm going all cash. You slide into positions, you slide out of positions. That's really the way you want to do it, because that's the way to mitigate risk. And not losing money, it's a lot more important than making money. Heard it here first, guys. No, you didn't. That's not my quote. Anyway, let's go to Ethereum real quick. Now, we talked about Ethereum yesterday. Continues to be showing really good signs. We saw the volume pop up, get sold off very quickly, but there's some good activity. This is a very solid sign right here that it's holding these levels and bouncing off of this previous resistance, which is now a support level on the 1 hour on Bitfinex Ethereum. This is the USD chart, but it is looking good, relatively speaking. Again, though, it's got the same thing going on that Bitcoin has. When's the freak out? When's the oh my God, I can't believe this is going. This is, is what it is. And we'll see. Now, S&P 500, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm going to go to the 30-minute, which is kind of unkosher for an equities index. You typically go longer time frames on these, but yesterday I had a pretty severe sell-off. We started off pretty bullish, and then it's kind of bouncing back down here. Look at the S&P 500. It's kind of doing what Bitcoin's been doing on a little bit of a different scale, obviously. We're seeing a lot of this up and down. This is coming mostly from macro uncertainty, specifically through the U.S. trade deals, or lack thereof, I should say. But the corporate earnings world is actually very, very strong. I'm pretty bullish on the S&P 500 as an overall. I think it's got a lot of room, contrary to what a lot of people think with the 200 moving average and everything. This, I think, is going to play a big part in Bitcoin's price. I think it's going to play a very, very big part, because this is going to relieve a lot of anxiety for investors. And without anxiety, people are willing to take more risks. And that's a good thing. This is a risky market. This crypto is speculative. We need people to feel comfortable and secure before they put money in. If they feel uncertain about things that are supposed to be certain, it's called the stock market, that makes this feel doubly risky. That's a problem. So the more you create a secure environment, the easier it is to make decisions. It's true with everything in life, to be perfectly honest. Now, let's talk about the altcoin market. I know we spent a little bit of time on that, on Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything else. I just think it's really, really important to weigh all these options. And luckily, none of this is professional advice. This is all entertainment value. So that's really the good news of all this. Not a professional. Looking at CoinMarketCap now, we are hovering at 263. We've been bouncing around that 250, 260 level. Bitcoin's dominance has also been fluctuating. I think that's no surprise with Ethereum showing strength. Whether or not Ethereum is going to be the leading indicator, meaning it goes up first and then Bitcoin follows, yet to be seen. It's typically Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin, and they kind of interchange depending on a variety of factors. But over the last few days, we have started to see a handful of these coins go, right? So you see something like Verge. Ontology's just been kind of doing it's consistently been going. Wanchain got a lot of press, publicity. It's been had a lot of hype over the last, I would say, 6 months, and it's finally been released. A lot of people waiting to buy into WanChain because of, I don't own any WanChain, by the way, but people, like, it's just been so much hype around it that I always look at coins that have, I look at these prices and I think to myself, this to me represents what has very pent up demand. If you strip away all other variables, specifically news or tech developments or whatever, what has got the biggest amount of, what has got the most passionate community members? What has got the people that are just waiting for the right price to buy it, right? They've got their eyes on that coin. They're like, man, I just can't wait to start accumulating that. That's what I'm really looking at here. Because if and when Ethereum does get a massive bull run, just like we've seen in so many times over, the coins that have the people that are the most diehard fans are the ones that are going to pump the biggest. Doesn't matter if they're the best coins, doesn't matter if they have the best tech, doesn't matter if anything. All that matters is, do they have people that believe in it, because that belief is going to get them to put in the most amount of money. And that's what you can start to observe here. I'm obviously I love the tech. I spend tons of time researching these coins, but I can tell you, purely from the market standpoint, the coins that are going to pump are the ones that have the people that are most obsessed with those coins. And you're going to see it happen if and when this Ethereum starts to pump as well as Bitcoin as well. So keep that in mind. Now you're going to see other coins pumping, like I believe Golem just released their new software, like their new, the mainnet, maybe mainnet, whatever. It's funny. Anybody who watched this show, you remember last year, I did a huge buy into Golem. I was like, this is it. I'm going for it. And just tanked. Luckily, it came back on the OMG rumors, and I got the break even on that. But I was just like famous last words. But so the ones that have the good news, you can kind of separate those out. The ones where there's no real news, it's just people that are just like, oh yeah, this is the best coin. This is the best coin. And the rationality is the same song and dance that you heard in 2017. That's typically what's going to pump. Don't let if you just want to make money, and this is not a promise, obviously, but if you want to make money on altcoin runs, the best thing to do is find people that are most obsessed with their coins, not the best tech, not the ones that you believe have the longest term, just the ones that people are most obsessed with. That is how it is. I'm not saying that is how I want it to be, but it's one of those things in life. It's much, much better to see life for what it is than to, there's a famous quote by E.E. Cummings, right? He says, every day I wake up and I'm faced with a decision. Do I change the world or do I enjoy the world? And it makes for a very, very tough morning. And I think that's kind of true with this too. It's like, do you look at altcoins because of how much they can do? Obviously, like they can change the world, utility, security, everything. Or do you look at it as like, man, you can make a ton of money if you play this game? Everyone's got makes their own decisions, but I think that's the thing to watch. And you want to watch it, look in the comments. Go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go on Reddit, go anywhere. Look at the comments. Who is obsessed with specific coins? Who will pump it? Who will put all their money into it in order for that coin to be realized? Interestingly, Cardano got called out on CNBC as the next coin that's gonna blow up. CNBC does not have a good track record, by the way, of picking winners. So, take it for what it is. I don't really have any pros or cons against Cardano, but CNBC tends to, interesting fact, if anybody didn't know, Cardano futures have the second highest volume on BitMEX. If you don't know what BitMEX is, it's a margin trading platform. It's like a future, you can trade futures on it. And Cardano is number 2. It's kind of funny, but so it goes. One last thing about the altcoin market that I think is an uncomfortable truth. Excuse me. And I think that Tron is a good example of this. I'm not going to get into Tron. I know there's plenty of people that love Tron. Justin Sun, great. Go. I hope you make $1 billion. Great. But Tron is a very it's a very interesting case study for the altcoin market based on their history with the tech, with the white paper, with the founding team, with the founder, the way that they have marketed it with hype, the community, everything. And it is currently at a $2.5 billion valuation. So when I look at, that's something that I look at when I'm looking at Bitcoin and I'm looking at this price kind of bouncing around and I'm thinking to myself, man, this is just like doesn't feel like it's eliminated certain things, or it doesn't feel like the market price is really where it is. I have a hard time understanding why Tron, but really why a lot of these coins are still valued where they're valued. I'm not saying that eventually they can't be worth 100x this, but as it stands right now, I mean, you go to Silicon Valley, I mean, you walk down the street here and you're like, you see unicorn companies here and there. There's probably 30, 40 unicorn companies at any given time. Unicorn meaning they hit $1 billion valuation. There's not that many. They're huge teams. They have massive infrastructure. They're creating massive revenue, and they're definitely not valued at $2.4 billion. And I'm actually doing I'm like putting together this presentation for this conference, and I'm trying to come up like this idea of bubbles really happen when when you have a population of people that believes that there's a new way to value things that is currently incomparable to current ways of valuing. Same thing happened on the internet. You go back into history, like that's really how it goes. And the same thing is still happening here. If you walked up to somebody and they said, why is IOTA worth $2.79 billion? You can get super technical and super complicated. Crypto Assets, great book by Chris Bernatsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Go to coinmaster.com/story. You should get a copy. It's really good, but it's very hard to equate that to a regular company. And the more that disparity exists, in my opinion, the more this is still the Bitcoin and the crypto market is still at jeopardy of being overpriced. That's just how markets work overall. That's like the big market, the big macro market. So, and I think last week we talked about this, listening to podcasts of other, going and go listen to me. I mean, I listen to my videos from November 2017 and I'm like, oh man, dude, like you sound like such an idiot. Like you're so drunk on crypto, right? And luckily I remember sitting there being like, look, I know what's happening right now. It just passed 10,000. And I was like, I know that this is when I should be selling because I think that it's going all the way and I'm still buying in more. And, I like kind of walk through that. This is all on these old videos, but listen to people on podcasts, on videos, anywhere. They try to justify the valuations of these coins, which may end up being completely justified. I'm not saying that. But say, all right, well, explain to me why VeChain is worth $1.4 billion and call it, like some delivery service here that's making $20 million a month is only worth $800 million. Like, explain that to me and listen to how they try to maneuver that conversation. And the more friction there is in that conversation, the more something the market price still has not been found. And I can tell you that the new markets typically do not bring up the old markets. The old markets bring down the new markets and absorb them, and the new market just gets bigger. It's really how it works. So anyway, I can go on for a long time on that. Now, the other big piece that we're seeing, Coinbase has released a lot of new news about people they're bringing in. Novogratz, who we mentioned yesterday, it kind of makes sense now. We realize that they're doing a press release. Like this is typically how it comes. Novogratz gets a lot of press on the New Yorker. comes out and he starts saying like, hey, we're bringing in a Goldman Sachs VP, I believe, Richard Kim, to be his COO. Is that right? Yeah, Chief Operating Officer at Galaxy Digital, right? The whole thing, the bank. You should go read that article yesterday. Coinbase brought in a bunch of new executives to spearhead a lot of new programs. They're hiring like crazy. I think that this is a really interesting sign that people are starting to come into crypto's ecosystem. And we talked about this last week with Amber, I can't remember her last name, from JP Morgan, where she just left to go start something new, and how it's not only not only that they're excited about crypto, it's they're not excited about banking usually, right? It's got to be a little bit of both. And so I think that this is a super interesting macro trend where they're getting ready. I don't think that necessarily means that the price is going to be affected. It's just that there's you got to be ready. There's a great, what's the guy's name? Les Brown. If you guys have ever seen Les Brown, I should put this video up sometime. I'll put it on Twitter sometime. He has a great speech where he talks about you got to be hungry. And he talks about how he's a young DJ, disc jockey, interning. And he just kept going back. He finally got an internship. And he talks about how he was young, he was ready, and he was hungry. And the most important piece is that he was ready. He was ready for the opportunity when it presented itself. And that is what's happening right now, in my opinion, in this macro world, is that all of this stuff that's happening with regulation, with exchanges, with Novogratz, with banks, with everything that's going down, it's not that they are like, hey, Bitcoin price is going to, it's about to skyrocket, let's get going. Is that they are building out, they are getting ready for whenever the market does go big. It could be this week, or next week, I should say. It could be in 2020, could be in 2025, but they are getting ready. They are preparing. And again, we always got to decouple. We decouple tech, we decouple macro, we decouple price. Everything needs to get decoupled from price when you're making decisions. Price has to be the most subjective piece of this entire equation. But realize they're getting ready. They're like they're building the infrastructure. The infrastructure is critical for long-term success. Last thing I thought was interesting. I'm fascinated with the stablecoin movement, or I should say, like stablecoin. Who's going to win? Right? Bittrex just did what? True Dollar, or TUSD instead of Tether, which is USDT. There's a few more. I have some Maker. There's like Basecoin is one. TrueCoin is one. There's a lot of these stable coins that are coming out. And I think that this is going to be a very, very big deal. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, because I think that when you get a stable coin, we really have a chance at getting away from fiat, which is that's a true, like that's when crypto becomes a very, very, very big deal. And hopefully it's big enough and the regulations are already in place enough that that doesn't turn into negative legislation, because that could be a huge threat. But stablecoins is an interesting one. I do not know which coin's going to win. I don't know if any of them can really win. But if someone can figure out the stablecoin thing, it's going to be huge for this ecosystem. So I think that this is a really interesting macro trend that I would encourage everyone, if you see articles about stablecoins, keep an eye on it. Maybe be invested in it, I don't know. But this is a win-win for the entire ecosystem. This is a huge technological and market boosting impact. So with that, go back, look at this, zoom in. Bitcoin making another nice little move. Obviously got this big chart thing to fill in, so we're going to keep an eye on this. Exciting times. Always great to have you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to these episodes. I really do. It's a favorite part of my day. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I will catch you all tomorrow. All right, peace out.